There's a trend in America to homeschool your children. I wonder why that is. Robert Bortins is an author. He's written Woke and Weaponized, How Karl Marx Won the Battle for American Education. That's kind of a sad way to introduce you, Robert. What's going on?
Hey, John. Yeah, we, of course, we saw an elected socialist in New York City's the mayor up there, and he said we need to throw off rugged individualism and embrace the warmth of collectivism. And we see that, Gen Z and just our nation's $39 trillion in debt, and people can't read, they can't do math, they don't know their geography, and I wanted to figure out why that was and why homeschoolers seem to be performing so well. So Alex Newman and I decided to go do a research. How did our public schools get started in America? Are they being successful, or are they failing our parents? And why is homeschooling growing so much?
So did you collaborate on this book with Alex?
Yep. Yeah, Alex, he's an investigative journalist. And
he's been on our show a couple of times. We like Alex. He's great.
Yeah, he's a dear friend of mine. And so, you can't solve a problem. Most people understand our education system in America is not working, but you can't solve a problem if you don't know the root cause. And so we wanted to go look at the research and figure out what the root cause was. And we found out that it was Marxist from the beginning, and the intent of the founders of the public school system, people like John Dewey, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, was to use our public schools and weaponize it against the citizens to create good socialists, so that the United States could be successfully merged with the USSR. And, they did that through taking over the teachers' colleges and just basically providing a woke and weaponized education system inside the United States, while the rest of us were thinking that it was, helping us with our values, and it's not. And now we see the fruit of that all around us.
You would think these people were pretty smart, but why do they insist on pushing an ideology and worse, a form of government that has never demonstrably worked? And we're finding that out in real time in New York City right now, as hundreds of billionaires have left the state because they don't want to be taxed to death. And so they just pack their bags and they leave. And then the radical liberals blame them for their condition because their tax base is evaporating. It is such a circular type phenomenon, more like a snowball full of rocks traveling downhill, collecting both speed and size. Why can't they see that?
Well, they believe that private property is really the root of all evil. And a guy that we exposed back in 1826 during the time of Marx, Robert Owen, he said that he wanted to start a public school system so he could rid the trinity of evil from America. And he called the trinity of evil religion, family, and private property. And so they believe that every single war, would be stopped, that famine would be stopped if we would just tax the billionaires and redistribute the wealth, and that we could have some sort of socialist utopia here on Earth. And so that's their worldview. That's why they say, when you bring up 100 million people have been killed because of this worldview, many by their own government, that it's just because we didn't get the right people in place.
They've never gotten the right people in place. It just doesn't flat out work. Even Russia has moved to a more capitalist form of a society. There are more oligarchs in Russia and really significant wealthy individuals that have done it through the old-fashioned way of inventing, marketing, selling, and it works.
Yeah, it works. It works for each individual. It creates human flourishing. It gives people a purpose. It gives them an opportunity to make a better life for themselves. But they really want to control society. They would rather rule over the rubble than to have a free society where people are making decisions that are contrary to their worldview. And so they want people on the economic hamster wheel. They want people who are buying their pills, that are watching their television shows, that are mindlessly entertained. And how do you do that? Well, you have to strip people of their identity. You have to strip them of their family's last name so that they're, more associated with, if they're an Apple or Android person, than, maybe what their great grandfathers did. And so you have to divide the children away from the parents as early as possible to create these consumer mindsets, because they see that, once you're kind of on this consumer hamster wheel, you need more and more and more to satisfy yourself, and then you can easily control society and rule over it. And so, ultimately, that's what we've seen with Hollywood. That's what we've seen with our public education system. And we have maybe a temporary reprieve with the current government, elected federal government, but we see all around us how people are embracing, like in New York City and California and Seattle. I know Minnesota is trying to do a wealth tax, which is just absolutely insane. But it's the creed of greed, and that's absolutely what they've bought into.
So the three tenets were, they want to do away with religion, private property, and what was the third?
And marriage. Because they knew that if you had family ties, that there would be loyalty there. So ultimately, if they want the state to replace the parents, and they do that by separating kids from their family as early as possible. Private property, our taxes are sky high here in the United States now. I mean, people are paying 40-50% of what they earn to some sort of state entity. And then religion, I think Barnes shows less than 6% of Americans now have a biblical worldview, and Gen Z's down to 2%. That may have bottomed out. We see some great things in the statistics of more and more young men and people going back to church because they see this ideology is unfulfilling when you just look to consumerism to fill your needs instead of a spiritual force that created you. But yeah, it's a sad state that we find ourselves in, and that's why, even though we feel like we defeated communism when the wall fell, and during the world wars, they were secretly infiltrating the United States, not through military might, but through Hollywood and through our education system, and they've used that to create good little collectivists here in the United States that will, abandon their family. Right? They'll complain using Twitter and their Apple phone about capitalism while experiencing all the benefits of it. And so that's ultimately their goal, is to be able to control society and rule it. And yeah, that's why it's so important for families to take their sovereignty back, to be in control of their child's education, and to fight back against the collectivist ideology that's infiltrated our country.
So who are these people? I heard you say the Carnegies.
Yeah, so people like the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and then the Ford Foundation were kind of the three big ones. And they were, back in the 1950s, weaponizing their grant-making powers in the federal government, just like USAID. They were pulling the USAID playbook in the 1950s. You can read about it in the Reese Report. Since then, they've recruited people like Bill Gates, the Walton Foundation, George Soros, groups like that who want to, control society. And you can see exactly what they were doing versus in COVID. I mean, COVID really exposed what their game plan was and how much they had, basically made it so everyone would do whatever Big Brother told them to do. They would say, how high? Oh, you want us to go 6 feet away? And all that's from that conditioning of believing the government instead of believing what's in front of your own eyes.
So I do sense that we are under attack from so many different directions. I used to think it was one centralized place or enemy, but now, regrettably, it is a diverse segment and cross section of entities. So I decided to try and graphically illustrate it, and I put this little diagram together, which is the United States, and I'll hold it up there so you can see it.
Yep.
But you can see that we've got foreign enemies, Russia, China. Mexico's on a dotted line. Canada is on a dotted line. They're our allies, but at times they're not very sympathetic to what we feel that how we feel they should behave. The European Union is a constant pain in our side because we have done so much for them. They act like spoiled children to me, that they just want more and more from us, but they don't want to give. And then there's Iran. That's clearly a solid line. And Cuba down there is kind of a squiggly line. We really don't know. It doesn't have any real power, so it's not like the rest, but maybe Cuba is going to come over to us. But the more disturbing thing to me are the inside influences that you see there that seem to be working against us. We suspect that there are sleeper cells from our enemies embedded in the United States, like from China and from the Middle East.
Sure.
And then there's the deep state, which is a real concern. And then you've got special interests, big pharma, big tech, big ag, just go down the list. Then we've got Antifa to deal with, and the intel community, the FBI and the CIA. And then we've got a lot of crime in our country still, and the mob, and their influence cannot be underestimated. What do you think of my graphic?
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, you have, right, Margaret Thatcher said the problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money, and Europe has clearly run out of their own money, and so now they're coming to the United States to steal ours. And you've got a lot of big pharmas run by crony capitalists. They don't care about the common man. They just want to enrich their pockets so they can fly to Epstein's Island and do whatever they want to do there. And so we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sickness system, and it's like I said, that's why it's all been weaponized against us to strip us of our wealth, to $39 trillion in debt. Where did that money go? Well, it went to a lot of those entities that are right there on that sheet, right? We gave, Obama gave billions of dollars to Iran. We have all these USAID grant making, features and foreign aid that we're not using to better the common man's money, but instead giving it to these 501c3s that are controlled by, leftists who hate us, a lot of times foreign interest, and they are not spreading American values abroad. They use our grants and our money that we send them to spread socialism, to spread sexual deviance and abroad. And it's an attack on our Christian values that our country was founded upon. And yeah, absolutely. As far as think about cereal, everyone was told that cereal is good for your heart. Well, there's actually no studies that have ever shown that. That's a marketing ploy. And so, all of these sorts of people have tried to strip us of our dignity, strip us of our health, and strip us of our wealth. And they're attacking us from all sides, not just foreign interests, but even sometimes our own civil government is doing it, or they're hiring 501c3s and taking our tax money in order to brainwash ourselves and our kids. And they know kids are the most vulnerable. And so that's where, as we exposed in our book, Woke and Weaponized, about 80% of the focus of Russia before the wall fell was to infiltrate our education system. And that's why they had guys like Mann and Dewey and really focusing on the teachers' colleges so that everyone who got a teaching degree would be educated in their collectivist ideology to undermine American exceptionalism, so that we would be susceptible to these lies, and so that we would have a group of young people who can't think straight. That's why our education system keeps dumbing down results. You can look at a test from 1898, and one-room schoolhouse 8th grade test is harder than most master's degrees final tests now. And we just waste people's time, and we spend a ton of money doing it.
It's crazy. Well, Peter Schweitzer, who's a friend of ours and has been on the show a couple of times, and a lot of people from the Government Accountability Institute have come on The Truth with us. He's written a new book that is very compelling called The Invisible coup. And he basically says that, these migrations that came into the United States, they weren't organic. They were planned and paid for by people that want to infiltrate the United States. And it does seem that they want to diminish your power and my power and the great silent majority's power in America and give it to illegal immigrants.
No, absolutely. And they, specifically the Democrat Party at the moment, knows that they can't win on their arguments. And so they've imported voters. How is someone in Venezuela who's making $5 a day making a 3,000-mile trip to our border, right? I mean, where is that money coming from? Some of it's from our own tax dollars, where we're actually funding through Catholic charities them coming in here. But it's very strategic by our enemies. That's how you get sleeper cells in America. Who knows how many are here, but those could be activated at any time. I absolutely believe that. I mean, you have all of these young male without their families coming here. Like if it was truly an asylum situation, why would you leave your wife and children behind if you were fleeing tyranny? It doesn't make any logical sense. And so what they hope to do is, pass some sort of amnesty bill. They've already weaponized our census against us, so that a state like California should have like 5 less House members than it has today. But because they counted illegal immigrants in the last census, and they've distributed tax dollars based on that, and votes and House members and things like that, that's been weaponized against the American citizen in favor of a foreign entity. And so it's classic vote buying activity. And we have, a minority party in America who thinks every once in a while they're a majority, and to keep that majority, they're willing to sacrifice whoever they can at the altar of power. And so that's ultimately what we're seeing around the world, or in the United States today.
Well, and it does seem like in the process of doing those things that they are attacking the very foundations of the American culture and society, religion, which we hold very near and dear to our hearts, private property rights, which you identify, and the family unit. Now, I keep asking myself, who could really be opposed to those things? Who could really oppose God? Who could really oppose the family? Who could really oppose the ability to own property? I mean, those are in everyone's best interest. So it seems more subversive to me and more designed to break us apart, fracture us. They favor the criminals more than the police. There's nothing about socialists that appeal to me. Not their ideology, not their tactics, not their violence, not their fascism. I mean, these are all things that every human being, I would think, would have a reflex action, a negative reflex, not just naturally to those sorts of things. I mean, do you like for people to boss you around and tell you what to do?
No, I don't, but they like doing it. And so they come up with clever marketing phrases that sell it to individuals.
Do people really want to be told they have to wear a mask? Do they really want to be told they can't congregate in their own homes at holidays? I mean, yet in New York, as you were talking about Mandami, the people that elected him are really begging for that kind of treatment that is going to come back onto them at some point. Is it just P.T. Barnum was right that a sucker is born every minute? Is that the phenomenon that we're watching?
No, I mean, it's very tactical that they used our public school system to create really this mass psychosis ability from the multimedia and big business. And so they do it by what they call classroom management. And so they've basically taken the same tactics that you would use to train a dog and made it so that you could, train an individual child to be obedient, not to their families, not to God, but to whoever the government puts in an authority figure. And so it's taken many generations. Each generation forgets a little bit about what the previous generation knew before. And again, I think, basically America can't be taken over by a foreign entity. It can only be taken over from a failure within. And so how do you get a country to fail? Well, you destroy its moral fabric. You destroy, the family. You destroy these things, and the Bible tells us it's a spiritual battle, John. And so we're not battling against flesh and blood, but prince and principalities of this world. And so we know that the devil himself hates religion, hates God. He hates the family because the family represents God's relationship with His creation, with you and I. And private property is something that God designed from the beginning. He gave Adam and Eve private property and told them to cultivate the world and to make it a better place. And so He hates when that's being done as well. And so He's always did God really say? And always spreading lies. And there's plenty of people who are going to trade their soul for power. And, Jesus wins in the end, but we have to deal with the consequences of sin in the meantime. And as Christians and as believers, and we need to understand what it is, call it out and say, not my kids, not my community, and not my country.
So I've spent most of my career in sales. And the typical sales technique is you get people to talk about the problem that they're having, whatever context that's in, and we call that making them sick when they start talking about the inefficiencies in their office or the problems that they have with their current vendor. And then we make them well by showing how our product can solve those problems. Can you make us well, Robert? Because you've done a masterful job of making us sick. How do we rehabilitate our country and get it back on the rails?
Yeah, I mean, the honest truth is it's a grassroots effort. It's each individual family saying, not my kids, not my household, and taking self-sovereignty and rejecting socialist ideology in their house. And then it's pastors and it's business leaders who understand the dangers of this ideology, saying, we're going to preach from the pulpit the dangers of this. We're going to create scholarships. We're going to create private schools. We're going to make sure every kid in our church is getting a Christian education, whether it's homeschooling or a 3-day-a-week university model school or a Christian school. It takes business leaders saying, hey, I want my next generation of employees to be well educated. I'm going to create scholarships for my employees to send their kids and pull them out of public schools. Ultimately, it's about saving the next generation. Grandparents, right? Make sure that your kids aren't in public school. Be willing to pay for private school or help your parent, watch the kids at homeschooling them. It's not complicated, but it takes self-sacrifice. And they've created this ideology of greed and envy, which is the exact opposite of self-sacrifice. And so we have to throw off those chains and embrace what the good book tells us to do, which is, no longer steal and instead work so that we have something to give to our neighbors. And so it's not complicated. We have to stop outsourcing things that the government has no business doing for us and do it ourselves, even if we have to pay for it twice through taxation and by doing it the right way ourselves. But until we have people who are willing to step up and do those things, we're going to be continuing to go off the wrong track. And we're $39 trillion in debt. So the time to make these decisions, and maybe make a change and save our country, there's not much time left. There's a little bit of time to reverse it, but it takes people being patriots, people making self-sacrifice, and guess what? All those things lead to human flourishing. They lead to a much more fulfilling life than the hollow life of consumerism that is devouring our country.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think rather than waiting for somebody to swoop in and cure all of these things for us, that we each have an individual responsibility to do the lifting ourselves where we can. You and your wife, April, are certainly doing that and raising your 3 children. I commend you for that. My wife and I raised 3 boys who are now adult men, and we're very proud of them. But we did and make sure that they went to Sunday school every Sunday and then sat in church with us. after Sunday school. So you can start there, and you can also start by helping recruit new members to come to the church with you. And I don't think there's anything more important right now than getting everybody out to vote in November of 2026, because, 77 million Americans voted for Trump. We had a really phenomenal turnout, and we've got to do it again. And that opportunity is just right around the corner. We've got primaries coming up all across America, and then we've got the general election in November. And that could truly shape the future of our country. I can't not overestimate the importance of it enough to encourage people to get out and vote and get their friends, family, and parishioners to go with them.
Yeah, we get the government we deserve, and unfortunately, people have got to get out and vote. You can say you don't like this candidate or that candidate. I mean, just look at what's going on in Virginia, California, New York City, Minnesota. There's not two equal parties with an American dream that just have different ideas to get there. There's absolutely a Democrat Party right now who wants to create a socialist hellhole in the United States that they control and run over us Americans. And so, we got to get out and vote. We got to get our friends out and voting. But that's just a temporary measure. As you said, we got to get our families into churches. We got to create that as the center. The government caused these problems. So going asking the arsonists to go fix the fire is just dumb. So we've got to understand that the problem was we asked the government to do things that it has no business doing, and it becomes very costly and very ineffective. And so we have to bring back the American values of doing things ourselves in our community, holding each other responsible, and loving God. And ultimately, that's the solution.
I think that is a wonderful note to end on, and I really appreciate you coming on with us today. Robert Bortins, he's the author of Woke and Weaponized, How Karl Marx... Could we change that? Could we just wordsmith this a little bit? How Karl Marx won the battle for American education? How about we say how Karl Marx is winning the battle for American education? But that leaves the back door open for us to disrupt the plan. And I hope that we will. Just imparting my own two priorities for our country, very simply, are that we just eliminate fraud.
Yeah.
If we just eliminate fraud, I think we could really turn the ship. So what does that mean? It means fraud, waste, and abuse, dollars, obviously, but almost more importantly, eliminate voter fraud. Because if we don't have honest, free, fair elections in this country, we're reduced to a third world country, and we have no country. No republic moving forward. So, Robert, thank you for coming on, and I hope you'll come back again real soon, and have a good rest of your weekend.
Thanks, John.